Okay, today's lesson is on slope and rate of change. We're going to start off by discussing what slope is, talk about the four different types of slopes, and then we're going to look at the slope using a graph line, putting it into a table, and showing how they can work back and forth, determining what the slope is, and then giving a verbal expression. So utilizing a lot of different ways to talk about and show slope. You'll notice that I have a couple of pens, a straight edge, and a pencil. So let's get started. What is slope? It is a number that describes the direction and steepness of a line. How steep a line is. Very steep, like my pen right here, or not so steep, a little bit flatter. It is a relationship between the vertical and horizontal change between 2 points. In order to find a slope, you need 2 points, but you only need 2 points. The four different types of slope, what do they look like? We have a positive slope that always goes uphill from left to right. We've got a negative slope that goes downhill from left to right. We've got a zero slope, and a zero slope is like a flat line. It doesn't have any incline or decline. And then you've got an undefined slope, and that's the last one. And instead of the opposite of a horizontal line would be a vertical line. The fractions that are going to go along with this, remember that slope is rise over run. So the y values are going to be up top. So positive slopes are always going to have a positive y over a positive x. A negative slope will have one of the values be negative. So I'm going to say a negative y over a positive x. But that negative sign could be with the x. It could also be just out in front of the fraction. A zero slope is when you are going to have a 0 in your y value, no vertical change, and an x on the bottom. And then an undefined slope is going to be where you have your y values on top changing and no change for your x values. So those are what your fractions are going to look like when we are dealing with slopes. And that's what the pictures are going to look like. So let's get started. I'm going to do the first two, and then I'm going to have you do the last two. So when you're given a graphed line, you have a couple of choices. The first thing you could do is we're finding the rise over run, or the change in your vertical and horizontals. So I always start with my point on the left. And the point on the left, let's get the coordinates, -2, -3. And then the second point would be -1, -1. The third point would be 0, 1. And the fourth point would be +1, +3. And what we could do is we could put these in our table. So -2, -3, then -1, -1, then 0, 1, then 1, 3. And now we can operate in both directions, or both two different ways. If you're given a graphed line, we can use our slope triangle. So you're finding your vertical change. Well, to get from the first point to the second point, we go up and we go across. To get from the second point to the third point, we go up and across. And the third point to the fourth point, we go up and across. And if you have a straight line, which you should with slope, it's going to be the same values each time. So I go up 2 units, +2, to the right 1 unit. I'm going to put a little 1 in there. And then it should continue up 2 units, +2, to the right 1. And then up 2 units, a +2 to the right 1. So my slope here is going to be 2 over 1. Or 2 over 1. Now, when I look at my table, I should get the same thing. So let's see. our change in our y values, and y's are your vertical change, so it should be +2 each time. Well, -3 to -1 is +2. -1 to +1 is +2. +1 to +3 would be +2. From -2 to -1, we are adding 1. From -1 to 0, we add 1. And from 0 to 1, we add 1. So this just goes to show that our slope is 2/1. Now, our verbal description needs to talk about the vertical and the horizontal change. So our vertical change increased by 2 units. And our horizontal change increased by 1 unit. And that would be a good description. Notice that I used the word increased when they went up. I would use the word decreased if they went down. Okay, so that's how you find the slope, and they should match up 2/1, 2/1. Let's take a look at the second example, and if you want to pause your computer so that you can write that down, probably a wise idea. First things first, let's plot these points. So -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, +3, 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, 1, 2, 3 up. -2, 2 to the left, 2 up. 0, 1 would be 0, start at the origin and just go 1 unit up. And then 2, 0 would be start at the origin and just go 2 to the right. Now, if you're finding the slope, these have to be linear, which means they have to be a straight line. Draw my line. And now I can, instead of working from the graph, I can work from the table. So to go from 3 to 2, it is -1. To go from 2 to 1, it's -1. To go from 1 to 0, it's -1. So our change in our y value should be a -1. Now, for our change in our x value, we start at -4 and go to -2, which would be +2. -2 to 0, +2. 0 to 2, +2. So a -1 over +2. And let's see if that matches up with our graph. Again, I always start at the point on the left, and I'm going down 1, -1. To the right 2. When you're moving to the right direction, it's a positive number. We go down 1 to the right 2. Down 1 to the right 2, and you'll notice that the pattern, we hit each point when we continued that pattern. So the slope here is -1/2. Now in this case, the line had a vertical decrease of 1 unit. And horizontal increase of 2 units. Okay, so now we're going to look at the third one, and I'll help you out with this one by taking our points and plotting them. You'll notice that some of the points we have 1, 3, 1, 1 over, and then 3 up. We have 4 over, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 up. We would have 7 over, 7 runs off the graph, and 10 runs off the graph. But again, we only need 2 points to make that line. So I'm going to draw my line. Goes infinitely in both directions. And then you should be able to figure out your slope. If we look here, we go from 3 to 3 to 3 to 3. There is 0 change. So again, when it's rise over run, it is 0 up here. When we go from 1 to 4, we add 3, 4 to 7, we add 3, 7 to 10, we add 3. So 0 over 3, excuse me. It should be a 3. And on our our verbal description, a vertical, there is no change. And a horizontal, change of 3 units. Now, I'm going to have you do the fourth one on your own. I'll slide it down here. But let's go back real quick and figure out what slopes we got. So we have this one going uphill from left to right, both positive numbers, so this would be a positive slope. This one going downhill from left to right, 1 negative, so that would be a negative slope. And then the third one that we had was a horizontal line, and we had a 0 in the numerator of our fraction, so that would be a 0 slope. Right, and those are the 3 slopes. 3 out of 4. We didn't have an undefined one. But go back and watch the video again, because you will pick up more by watching the video more than once. And understand the difference between a graph and a table and a verbal description should be describing the exact same slope. I hope this video helped. Have a great day.